Alright then. I guess now's a good time to talk about the Decade movie, or, well, one of the Decade movies. There are kind of multiple movies featuring Decade, but this is specifically Decade's movie, and kind of, but not really, a finale for Decade. In Kamen Rider Decade, All Riders vs. Dai-Shocker. And it's honestly, now that I realize, I have not talked about Shocker at all during these Heisei series reviews. And that's because Shocker was basically a non-entity during the Heisei era of Kamen Rider until this very moment. They're not even mentioned in Decade proper until the later half of the series. So I guess I have to explain Shocker because they become a bigger part of the series again in the Neo Heisei or Phase 2 Heisei era. So, yeah, Shocker's kind of complicated to explain. To simplify what they are, they're the original baddies of the original Kamen Rider series. And they're also the original creators of Ichigo and Nigo, the first two Kamen Riders, as they were a group who would basically turn people into cyborg monsters. And that's what they did with Ichigo and Nigo. But before the brainwashing could set in, they had help escaping and managed to become heroes of justice who fight against Shocker's efforts of taking over the world. And somehow every single Showa-era group that was a Kamen Rider enemy force, somehow they all got wrapped in a Shocker. It's kind of weird, especially because I've seen Black, and it's really weird to think that Gorgum was eventually revealed to, yeah, they were part of Shocker. It's just kind of funny if you ask me. Anyway, so they were the big bads of Kamen Rider for quite a while, and they're kind of very super much analogous to Nazis, like the minions do the salute and the goose step thing. And yeah, it's kind of very common, especially in that time period, for villain factions in works, especially I don't know if in Japanese works, to be portrayed as being somewhat Nazi-esque. I mean, I get it, but it's kind of funny if you know the history. Anyway, another thing is Shocker's kind of like cockroaches in the fact that these guys are really hard to get rid of, because literally they've been wiped out on an almost yearly basis at some point. I'm not even kidding. Like, you'd think, Shocker's finally gone. Next special, Shocker's back for the 50th time. And everyone was like, how the hell did you come back this time? And some of the ways they come up with to bring Shocker back are utterly ridiculous. Like some of them are just, this is probably the only time I think that Shocker coming back was a decent way to do it, because the AR worlds thing. So yeah, there could be a world out there where Shocker rules, so they're trying to take over the multiverse now. But still, it's kind of funny how oftentimes Shocker's early destroyed and they somehow come back. It's a recurring trend with these guys. Anyway, they basically become the big crossover foes for Kamen Rider stuff for an honestly long ass while, recycling their old generals and various other things to get them in place to be the big bads. I guess it's supposed to be their tribute to Showa stuff, but at the time it feels really, honestly, I haven't seen a lot of Showa stuff, so I can't say it feels really weird, but honestly it is kind of weird how some of this stuff is reimagined in more modern context. Although sometimes the new suit designs are pretty cool. Anyway, on to the actual plot of this movie. Our story starts off with the Hikari Photo Studio crew getting to yet another new world before they notice something really weird about this one. Tsukasa's pictures are actually coming up normal in this world, with Natsume theorizing this means they're in his original home world. And following some vague memories from this world, they find a house Tsukasa has a key to in his jacket, and find a girl there waiting for him named Sayo, Tsukasa's sister. After a rather awkward meeting between the siblings, because Tsukasa doesn't have any memories, and, well, obviously that would be a big bummer if your big brother finally came back home. He's like, I don't know who you are, or I really can't remember you. yeah, we also learn that the destruction of the worlds is affecting this world too, and so Tsukasa is finally trying to do something about it. Manages to arrange a tournament for all the riders, so they can determine who's the strongest, because this will apparently stop the destruction of the worlds. Yeah, we're going back to the main plot of Decade for 5 minutes. Interestingly enough, he has a flash of memories, which may or may not be real. It's kind of convenient for the villain that he does get these memories back right now, as he takes on a tournament and beats up most of the riders, managing to win it. And then at the very end, it's revealed to Natsume and Yusuke that he is also the leader of Dai-Shocker, a new iteration of Shocker, say that 5 times, sent on a mission to bridge the worlds for Shocker's invasion of all the worlds, which is honestly a pretty decent idea. Hey, I'm the strongest member of Shocker, I'm gonna go out and take over every world, or at least leave the doorway open for all of our people to invade after I take out the world's best heroes. I think I've seen that plot line in so many different things, it's kind of cool. Anyway, with the worlds linked now, and with Natsume's grandfather wandering in and revealing that he is actually Dr. Death, or Dr. Shinigami, I want to say Dr. Death because it's easier for me to say in a script instead of saying Dr. Shinigami so many times. And, well, yeah, Dr. Death is one of Shocker's major generals. And, yeah, that's kind of a weird turn. It gets weirder, though. They toss Natsume and Yusuke out before going to Sayo, in which reveals that her butler is actually Shadow Moon, who is one of the main villains from Kamen Rider Black. They kidnap Yusuke so that Sayo can use him as a brain puppet, controlling his ultimate Kuga form to basically be the ultimate rider of all destruction. Dai-Shocker decides now is the perfect time to toss out Tsukasa, now that they no longer have a need for him, replacing him with Shadow Moon and Sayo as their true leaders. And again, Sayo using Yusuke as a meat puppet to beat up Tsukasa. Tsukasa tries to go back to Natsume, but she wants nothing to do with them after everything that's happened, after losing everyone. Her grandfather, Tsukasa, Yusuke. She's just done with this and just wants to get over with. And so Tsukasa wanders off in a depressed funk. Anyway, Shocker attacks in a rather awkward sequence because we hear a lot of the Shocker man squealing, and that noise can be so nerve-wracking. It is not the most pleasant thing in the world. Like, I get why, but still, hearing it so much does grate on you over time. Anyway, so Shocker's on the move, attacking the worlds, and so Natsume, who's helped by Narutaki, who... Okay, so remember this plot point for the next Decade feature. Narutaki says that the reason he was against Decade was because he knew about the Dai-Shocker thing, and helps Natsume come up with the plan of reuniting the remaining riders to fight Decade alongside the end. To team up with the end to fight Decade alongside the remaining riders. This plan goes south because the remaining riders are Punch Hopper and Oja, aka assholes, who decide to join up with Shocker because they let them have fun. And by fun, I mean destroy shit, because these two are assholes. Anyway, while that's going on, Tsukasa is beaten up by, and then given a pep talk by, an AI version of Rider Man, who is edgy as all shit, but in all honesty, kind of like it. I mean, again, it's edgy as all shit. Like, he basically says Tsukasa took a cyborg arm and tells the dude, hey, you can't get your forgiveness by getting killed. You have to work hard to get that forgiveness, which I swear was a lesson Tsukasa gave to someone in the show proper. Oh, and also he rips off his cyborg arm to put on an arm weapon replacement, and it's this kind of edgy blade gun thing. And this is incredibly edgy, and I'm kind of down for it. Like, shit. Like, where's my edgy Rider Man spinoff show? We got edgy Amazon, so I can't get edgy Rider Man. It seems like the perfect show to make it edgy version of. Anyway, so yeah, Tsukasa goes off to fight Shocker, managing to reunite with Natsume, and when him and Daiki are the only two who can fight against Shocker, suddenly speaking, Ichigo Nigo and a bunch of other riders show up. Yeah, so all the Kamen Riders join up to fight Dai-Shocker, and it's a big fight. And in the middle of this fight, Tsukasa manages to save Yusuke by basically giving Sayo a pep talk to basically get her back on his side and tell her, hey, Shadow Moon's kind of a manipulative asshat, so cut that out. Sayo has a whole subplot in the movie, about her being a caged bird and wanting to be free, and how her brother got all the freedom and she didn't. It's kind of relevant, but also just a side plot for a very movie important character. Anyway, this frees Yusuke before Shadow Moon attacks and basically beats them back. And then once Shadow Moon's beaten them back, suddenly Kamen Rider Double enters. So this is the first of the Kamen Rider Early Bird cameos. This is something that happens to this day, although we do skip it some seasons, but it happens for the most part in every Kamen Rider solo movie. The next season is teased with the new rider showing up, being awesome, and then leaving. In this case, Double shows up, beats Shadow Moon up, and then just leaves. It's kind of funny in the context, because it looks like this new guy came out of nowhere, beat up the guy who was beating us up, and then just left. Again, it's kind of hilarious. We'll talk about Double next time, but again, this is funny. Yeah, so he beats up Shadow Moon. Everyone gives Shadow Moon a rider kick and destroys the Shocker base before something crawls out of it, a giant monster called King Dark, who's apparently one of the main antagonists from Kamen Rider X. I have not watched X because I have not watched Showa content. Moving on. Because, of course, this is a giant monster, they summon Kamen Rider J to fight it. DN uses Kamen Rider J like a fucking Pokemon to fight it, which begs the question why he didn't use that earlier. But anyway, Kamen Rider J can't really do much because Kamen Rider J's existence in modern content is to job harder than Krillin and Dragon Ball. I can't think of a modern fight J wins, I'm going to be honest with you. So they finally use something interesting. Tsukasa's final form ride as he turns into Ultimate Decade, when he turns into a Deca Driver that attaches to J and allows him to turn into his final form, and also use all the riders as cards on said final form. And they win the day. Obviously, the heroes go back to the photo studio, with Tsukasa giving Sayo an offer to join them, but Sayo says she's off to do her own adventures in the worlds, and goes off on her own journey, with Tsukasa and friends going off to continue their journey. Which, honestly speaking, that's going to be how every Decade special ends, with Decade going on another journey. He's the wandering hero Decade. Anyway, this movie is okay. It's honestly pretty dull at points, and the whole Kamen Rider tournament thing, despite how cool of an idea it is, feels kind of wasted. And this is not going to be the first time I say the idea of a Kamen Rider tournament feels wasted. But yeah, the whole thing about Tsukasa being Dai-Shocker's leader, while it does work as, kind of an explanation for some things, for other things it just doesn't make much sense. Like, yeah, they explain that, traveling the world, we can lose memory. But this is never brought up again and never shown to affect any of the other people who travel between worlds, just Tsukasa the one time. On top of that, it feels weird for him to be Dai-Shocker's leader and have this really cold, cruel past when we'd never had any inclinations of that in his character beforehand. Yeah, he was a bit of an asshole, but that's just Tsukasa. A bit of an asshole. And then there's the Shadow Moon thing. So, Shadow Moon, it's weird, because Shadow Moon's so important to the story of Kamen Rider Black, that it's really weird whenever they do a thing with Shadow Moon and Black isn't a focus character. Like, okay, so, minor things with Kamen Rider Black, but Shadow Moon's essentially Black's brother. Man, that sounds weird saying it like that. He's Kamen Rider Black's brother, who was basically mind-washed, turned into a bad guy by the villains of that series in an effort to get them to fight for reasons I don't have time to get into, but essentially the two had to fight because Destiny said so. Shadow Moon without Kamen Rider Black is really weird to me because they're so yin-yang. Like, it's literally their thing. Also, I do like the fact that I didn't mention it because I probably can't say his name right, but Shadow Moon's human identity in this movie, essentially his name means Shadow Moon. It's one of those really funny things about the Japanese language. You could just have where you have names that mean this thing in context and out of context, and just this name that means Shadow Moon for a character that is Shadow Moon is a pretty cool. Although I do kind of wish he wasn't Shadow Moon. Hell, maybe if he were better if he was Crimson Shadow Moon, which is a thing. Anyway, you know, it would honestly work a bit better if this was Kamen Rider Black's world, and Tsukasa was from Kamen Rider Black's world, or at least they are Kamen Rider Black's world, and then that could maybe explain it. But no, Black's world is somewhere else. And again, saying it like that is really weird. Anyway, the double cameo. The double cameo is really good. It's one of the better of these early bird cameos because they all had the same tendency of Rider shows up, does something cool, beats the bad guy, and leaves. Although again, it's weird that double shows up, beats Shadow Moon, leaves, and then everyone has to finish him off for him. Like, it's kind of weird, and I kind of love it for how weird it is, especially knowing Double's character. And like I stated earlier, I am iffy on Tsukasa being Dai-Shocker's leader, but it worked if they were actually tricking him this whole time into thinking he was leader, although certain things make less sense in that case, like the stuff with AR Rider Man, because Tsukasa took his on because he was leaving the organization, like he was the leader of the group, like in Rider Man's origin story, but he's not the leader. It's something weird. Anyway, I do like this as an origin point for the Deca driver and the DN driver. Because, of course, Dai-Shocker would try to manipulate the power of Kamen Riders. They're the dudes who invented the original Kamen Rider, or at least the original Shocker created the original Kamen Rider. But yeah, it makes sense that Dai-Shocker would try to manipulate the power of Kamen Riders with their own new rider who had fancy powers to mimic all the other rider powers. Again, it is a cool idea for the origin of the Deca driver and the decayed powers in the first place, as well as DN's powers in all honesty too, because they also say that that he stole DN's driver from Dai-Shocker. But again, it still feels weird for Tsukasa to be set Dai-Shocker's leader. Overall, this movie is okay. The fights are pretty good, although it does do the whole movie war thing that you're going to have to get used to, where the fights at the end just become giant messes because so many people are on screen fighting at once. Like it's cool, but Toei doesn't have the big enough space for that, sadly. Only so many people have Disney money for that thing. And some people argue Disney didn't even pull that off right for Endgame. Anyway, yeah. Now, I said this serves as a semi-finale to Decade, and it kind of does, kind of doesn't. Like, we get a true finale later in the double crossover movie, because that one goes a bit more into the Rider War thing, although it's still never really explained about the Rider War. In all honesty, this feels like just an extra long episode of the Decade series, which I guess is fine. These movies are supposed to feel like longer episodes of the show, at least a little bit, with just more budget put in. And out of all of them, at least this one's better than the Godspeed Love one. Like, Godspeed Love is kind of a nothing movie, even though I do like parts of it. So, yeah, if you like Decade, you'll like this, at least a little bit, hopefully. And with that, I'll see all of you guys next time. Next time. Bye for now.